Hello and welcome to today's Key Insights webinar, Brand Strategy for Brexit and Beyond. My name is James Dales, I'm CIM's Head of PR and External Affairs, and I'll be the host for today's webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate. The presentation will last for approximately 40 minutes. During this time, you'll be able to send text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into a chat box of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we'll collect and address as many as we can during the Q&A session at the end. Unfortunately, we don't send out the slides of the presentation. However, the webinar will be available to watch on demand via our Content Hub exchange in the next couple of working days. I will also urge attendees to visit CIM's export-ready online knowledge hub for the latest reports, expert articles and advice on preparing and driving revenues pre and post Brexit. The hub can be accessed via the CIM website. Just click on the appropriate tile on the homepage. I'd now like to hand over to Paul Hitchens, who will be today's presenter.
Thank you, James, for that introduction, and welcome to the CIM Brand Strategy for Brexit and Beyond webinar. I am Paul Hitchens. I'm a CIM course director for the Brand Masterclass, Brand Identity and Brand Touchpoints courses. I'm also the author of 3 books on brand strategy and a TEDx speaker. I have over 30 years industry experience to share with you. In these uncharted waters of Brexit, it's essential to check that our brand strategy is a shipshape. As an island nation, we can take inspiration from our seafaring heritage. We need to be great communicators. We need to be decision makers, and above all, we need to be adaptable to the prevailing conditions. This presentation is divided into 4 sections: the need for a brand, how we create them, implement them, and sustain them. It provides an overview of the 2-day Brand Masterclass that I present with the CIM, so you get ideas of how to conduct your brand strategy and help you think about opportunities for the future of your brand. So, when we ask, what is a brand? How would we answer the question? It's a fact, if you asked a whole room full of brand strategists, they'll probably have slightly different ideas on the definition of a brand. I define the brand as your past, present, and future. The past is your reputation. That's where all the goodwill has been built up, if you like it, banking the equity, where your various audiences have acquired stories and understanding of your brand. It's where the knowledge of the brand has been gathered, and that means both good and bad. All those stories build your reputation. That's your past. It's an important part of the brand, understanding it. The present is the experience that you provide, how it makes your audiences feel, how they use your products and services. And do they feel that they are being valued, and are they gaining value from using them? And in the future tense, it's about expectation. So loyalty towards your brand is going to be built up through your past reputation and the experience, and that is going to inform us as to what we can expect from you in the future. If you make it very clear what your purpose and your values are, we may be able to draw some conclusions as to where this brand is going. Is it a journey that we want to follow you on? So your various different audiences, not just your customers, your suppliers, and also your employees, will have an idea whether this is a brand that they can believe in based on the past, that they enjoy being a part of based on the experience, and that they can anticipate future developments with the future. So we need brands because they do some incredible things. A strong brand for you is going to help you make your way through the uncertain territory, uncharted waters of Brexit. A brand, when it's understood, helps you differentiate yourself in a marketplace. We're surrounded by brands. We wake up and we're bombarded with brand messages. So your brand needs to be clear and make it clear what it is that's different about it and makes it better, what makes it the right choice for your different audiences. So brand differentiates. Brands connect with people on an emotional level. People identify with the qualities that have built that brand. They identify with the community behind the brand. They identify with what the brand allows them to do. And so it connects with people through trust. Brands add value. By adding value, we can charge a premium for a product or a service. When people can judge you based on past experience, they know they enjoy the offer that you provide, they're willing to pay a premium. They want to maintain that ongoing relationship. Brands add value in lots of ways, by repeat custom, by providing a secure place of employment for your staff. They reduce costs, they increase value for the organization. And brands can be great communicators of change. They signify change. A rebrand makes it clear to the outside world that something important has happened in this organization. A new brand on the market can make a statement about why it's the right choice for its various audiences. We can use brands to let people know that we have new management, or that we've been acquired by a bigger holding company. So they're great communication devices. Brands, when they're strong, allow us to take our audiences on different journeys with us. When we understand the brand and we like the offer, then there's an opportunity for the brand owner to extend the brand. When we recognize the brand, when we're more likely to expect different shapes and formats, different delivery mechanisms, all built up around the same idea. So line extensions become possible. Vertical brand stretching means that we can provide brands or the brand at different price points. So if you look at the world of supermarkets, we're used to seeing premium brands and everyday value brands. So all built up around the same promise and relationship, but providing that experience at different price points and economies. Co-branding allows us to team up with another brand. Perhaps it has similar outlook on life, it has similar culture, but has a slightly different audience that we would like to be introduced to. So if we're thinking globally and we want to introduce our brand to a new audience, perhaps we should think about co-branding with a local brand that shares our values. And that would be a good way to introduce you to that audience. Of course, it's important that you are brands of similar value and that you can trust each other. Licensing is an opportunity for a brand that has great qualities associated with it, perhaps a lifestyle attribute. There will be people that create products and merchandise that will be keen to use your likeness, your identity, to embellish and improve and add value to their own products and services. The franchise model is possible when you've got a strong brand. Your ambition might not be to conquer the world with your own offices. You might actually want to have an idea, a format that you make available to entrepreneurs who don't have the capital to create their own brand or the time to create their own brand, but they see a viable business model. And so you could make your idea grow around the world through a franchise model. But we need to be careful that we don't stretch the equity in the brand too far. So by stretching the brand, we don't want to make the brand idea so thin that we're perceived to be a jack of all trades, and of course, sometimes a master of none. If we're going to do this, if we're going to invest in our brand, then we need to know what the brand is actually worth. What's the value to us, the owners of the brand? If you're going to invest in our marketing and a brand strategy and start to become a fully global brand, then there are methods of working out the value of the brand. There are companies, of course, very famous agencies who publish rankings of global 100s. But you might want to do this yourself. So how would you do that? Well, you might want to work with your financial department. There is the brand valuation standard, ISO 10668. It's well established now. It was first published in 2010. And what it does, it lays out a framework for working up the value of your brand. It begins with a legal analysis. Do you actually own your intellectual property? You're going to sell your brand if you don't own it. We need to think about the legal aspects of ownership. It looks at behavioral analysis. What have people paid for a brand like yours in the past? And from the financial analysis, it studies your present income, market conditions, and the cost that you've invested in the brand. So there is an established method available to us as marketers to work out the value of our brand. Of course, that's important if we're going to invest in expanding beyond borders into new territories. So now let's think about the creation of a brand. Many of you are probably working for organizations that have been going for 10 years, 20 years, much longer. So you're not going to be starting from scratch. But people will be looking at the structure of your organization to try and work out clues about authenticity, the scale of the operation, your full capability. So if we look at this model here of brand architecture, we can see in this single brand model, sometimes referred to as a monolithic or master brand or branded house, it's very clear to the outside audience that this is one big company feeding back to the umbrella company. And this example, I've created an imaginary business called the Alpha Group. And so as the Alpha Group has grown into telecoms, oil and gas, healthcare and finance, it's a very clear strategy. So there's all the equity that the parent company has built up is constantly built up through these new avenues of expression, these new departments. Of course, one of the drawbacks of this particular model is that if there was a problem with Alpha Telecom or Alpha Oil and Gas, it could, of course, then become a reputational problem for the whole group as they all share the same identity. But it's one of the most logical ways of growing a brand. And if there is equity in the umbrella company, every time you start up a new avenue, a new type of business under that group, people have an expectation, and that could also help you cross borders when people really understand the umbrella company. So my next model, which is very closely related to the single brand, is the sub-brand model. So we can see our imaginary company here, the Alpha Group, has introduced A Phone, A Power, A Life, and A Money. And so there's a natural link. You know, they are leveraging the equity in the parent company. There is an awareness of that name, and people can see the family relationship. You know, there's a clear DNA here. And so again, we are working on the same visual identity and that recognition of it. In my third model, the endorsed brand, this could be a particularly attractive model for you if you are thinking of traveling to the other side of the world, opening up a new territory. It may be that your parent company has no recognition in that destination market. The Alpha Group means nothing to them. Now, if you're a sizable enterprise, it might be an attractive idea for you to actually buy a company in that territory that operates in the same fields as you, that you can then start to pour the qualities of the Alpha Group into, you know, whichever company you may be. So we can see here in this model, Beta, Telecom is clearly part of the Alpha Group of companies. You know, Gamma, and Delta and Epsilon have all got clear relationships. You know, we've got the flag mark there of the Alpha Group. So that clarity means that that local market, if they've been happily purchasing, you know, or working from Beta, they now are informed that they're now part of a bigger global group. It won't be a shock to the system. It will be business as usual related to the Beta relationship, but at the same time, they'll know that they have new powers and strengths because they're becoming global, and there's a clear link to the parent company. So this could be one model of growth, depending on how big your company is. Now, the next model is the branded model, also referred to as the House of Brands. Now here, the Alpha umbrella company has acquired or developed independent brands, and the outside world or the customers may not actually know there is a relationship between Beta and Gamma, Delta and Epsilon. They may not know that they're all owned by the Alpha Group. Now, of course, this could be an attractive model if you want to acquire a business overseas and it's business as usual, and you're not going to disturb or disrupt those relationships. But I think that in the long term, I think investors want to know who owns who. If ever there were to be a reputational crisis, we could find that journalists would uncover this whole family group and make it very clear how they're related. So that is worth bearing in mind. Of course, all of these models are quite academic. In reality, you may find that over a period of growth, you actually embrace a hybrid portfolio of many of these different models. You might be both branded house and have some endorsed brands, or you might be managing individual mono brands. The reality of a 100-year history of an organization may be that you're using a collection of these different architecture models. Now, the important question next is, who are we and what do we stand for? What exactly is this brand strategy? Well, I look at it from 8 important questions. I think it stood me well in developing brand strategies, and I hope you'll be able to find value in these 8 points. Purpose. It begins with purpose. Why are you doing this? What do you believe in? And what do you stand for? A purpose is really like a higher value. It's the ultimate quality. Now, there are a lot of books on purpose at the moment. It's become a very popular part of management business theory. And some people say, why can't we just concentrate on creating a great product or service? All this purpose stuff is a lot of nonsense. I actually believe in purpose. I think even if you concentrate on making the best product or service, that in itself might be the pursuit of excellence. And in that, there's probably something to uncover. Whenever you look at the foundation stories, the backstories of most businesses, those pioneering entrepreneurs, they're almost always driven by something. They're reacting to something that's happening in the world, and they want to make the world a better place. I think there's an immense amount of power and energy around purpose. And so I think it's important in looking at that and how it's going to affect the people that work for you, as well as your suppliers and customers. And that needs to be communicated with a vision so we can understand what this purpose is going to look like in 5 or 10 years' time. And sometimes we've got such a great idea that we actually achieve that vision very quickly. So we've got to be confident enough that we come back and recalibrate that vision and make it an even bigger idea that we can drive towards. If this is going to be possible, we're going to need values. Your values are part of your toolkit. They're your survival pack as you journey out around the world. Values maintain a sense of center. Bring you back to your purpose. Stop you from going off the rails, because values define the behaviors that we expect of the product, the service, the people that we work with, our supply chain. Without them, how can we ever know what we stand for, and how will we be able to measure whether we're gaining impact or whether we're actually making our way in the world? The mission is really like a charter. It's your Magna Carta. It's a statement of how your purpose, vision, and values are going to impact the world and how you are going to behave as a corporate citizen. So this mission statement is really a powerful document. Your proposition is about what is it that you do that nobody else does? And then again, that might come back to your purpose. It might come back to your vision. It might come back to your national origin. You may be offering something that in the market that you're traveling to, there's already a natural competitor. And part of your proposition might be the fact that you are a British by origin, a British brand. So often that national archetype and all the qualities that are imbued in that might be part of your proposition. And some brands build on the natural associations, the positive associations that their country of origin are built on. Your positioning allows you to decide, are you going to be all about quality and high price, or are you all going to be about a lower price and adding great value? Or you might even want to disrupt that and flip it around and actually say, we're going to be great quality at a lower price point. We can charter that quite easily across those quadrants. And in any market, you'll know. You'll be able to point who are those that are leading and the most expensive and provide the highest quality and standards, and who are the ones the other side of the spectrum who actually are providing the product or service that actually it might be all that you really need at an incredibly good price point. Your personality is how you behave as a corporate citizen, how this brand as an entity could be measured if they were a person. And that would be communicated through your people. So many businesses that I work with are service providers. And the measurement of that comes through their actual people, the conversations they have online, via telephone or in person. So think about how the personality of your brand and the values is actually brought to life through your colleagues, through your CEO, through senior management, and how it actually behaves. And your audience, we really need to be really clear about the audience. And as we travel and we explore new markets, we need to have people on the ground. We need to spend time researching because there might be a different perception of the type of products and service that you're providing in a different territory. You need to be ready for those non-governmental organizations who want to exert pressure on your particular industry and be prepared for that. Perhaps sometimes we work with those NGOs and actually tackle some of these issues, so that we're not seen as a problem. We're actually seen as part of the cure. So think about your audience, because it's not just your customer. It could be NGOs, it could be your supply chain, and they could be controlling the bigger narrative about your brand and the type of industry that you work in. This then builds on our culture. Don't forget your history, your foundation story, where you came from. If you've got 50 years to talk about, you can go back and say how you've been there through important moments in history, through hardships, through economic ups and downs, through wars and depressions, and still here you are. You've got those inspiring stories to tell. So don't forget that. And also think about your national origin, and are there stories that are compatible to the territory that you want to market to, that are going to be particularly helpful in introducing your brand. Your ethos is important, and consider the customs and the traditions of your intended market too. The language that you use. Your product name might be difficult to pronounce. At any point, wherever you market your brand, people want to be able to remember you. In fact, the name of your brand and the language that you use may be the first point of contact. Your people, always coming back to your people. They are your ambassadors, and your leaders, and how they behave is critical. If you're in a reputational crisis, the spotlight will be on your CEO. So they really need to be on brand, and they need to do lots of media training so that they're comfortable speaking to cameras and evangelizing your brand. Embrace traditions. You'll have your own traditions. There'll be national traditions. But there might be an opportunity for you to launch or debut your brand or marry your brand to local traditions that best exemplify what your brand is built on. But you can only understand that if you really understand your ethos and your values in the first place. We're humans. Use the senses. Branding and marketing doesn't have to be primarily visual. Think of all the other sensations that we have available to us. What would you be like as a sonic brand? What would you be like if you embraced the texture through touch, sound? Across the senses, think creatively about how you can connect with people. And don't forget, we also have that extra sense, gut instinct, when we just know when things are right. And that's an important measure of whether your brand is authentic, whether it feels right for us. Don't forget the physical environment too. Every time you put down a footprint on the world, every aspect of logistics, of the buildings that we occupy, of the shape and form of our products, will be a statement of our culture. We will be measured by them. Think if you were about to buy a house, they talk about curbside appeal. What would people think about your brand if they were judging you from the roadside? So, and the next level here, I want to look at the implementation of the brand design and its importance. I think too often we underplay the importance and value of design. But design can be a key differentiator. So often I've worked with clients who have an identity or that has been created with all best will and intention, but by amateurs. Perhaps they've asked a well-meaning relative who's a student starting out in their design career, or perhaps they've put out their branding to a competition. They've turned it into an exercise to embrace the local community. I can understand the thinking behind these, but these stories in the past have built up an idea that design is cheap. But designers study for a long time to get their professional credentials. We need to work with professional designers to help us build value in our brands. The creative industries are worth phenomenal. They are a jewel to Great Britain, brand Great Britain. And so we've only got to look at the realms of cinema and theatre and the legions of excellent examples out there. We really excel at creativity, so we should be embracing it in design for our brands. It will increase your market share. It creates exporting opportunities when people love the products and services that you're designing and producing, your way of doing things. They can lead to a greater profit margin when we have an iconic brand, an iconic product or service. And of course that is building up that overall value in our brand. Using design allows us to reduce costs, production costs. It lifts our reputation. Good design leads to understanding the quality and using quality as a differentiator. Think around you, look in front of you, the laptop you're using, the watch you wear, the shoes that you walk in, the car that you drive, the furniture that we sit at. They all represent brands. They've all been designed. There will be a designer behind all of them. And in each market, there will be people who excel. There will be true icons. And some of those icons are then allowed to stay in the public wish list for decades. Just look at the automotive sector, where interpretations of classic models have been regenerated and brought back to life because we love the form that they have and how they become an extension of our own values. Design matters, so we should embrace it. Brand identity. It all begins with your name. The first time that we're going to hear about your brand is going to be when somebody exchanges your name or perhaps says, I really recommend this particular company. So if we don't understand what they said, if we can't spell it, it's going to be a bit of an obstruction towards finding that brand. So I suppose the most logical place to begin with a name would be your family name if you're starting up as a business. And a family name in itself would be an indicator of geography, of a national type. Often we see family names in some of the world's biggest businesses. But if you're starting and you want to differentiate yourself by the type of business you are, you might be using a descriptive name. So we need to think about how those words translate into different cultures as we travel, because we might have a name that has very little meaning. So we'll have to, therefore, educate that marketplace as to who we are. Some big brand strategy companies, have very creatively used both Latin and Greek together to combine to create new words. And so we get examples where then we have brand names that actually are going to be more likely to be understood around the world because they have building blocks on language. There's the foundation of modern languages. Your strapline could underpin your purpose and your proposition. And a strapline, if it's in your native language, sometimes can actually build even more value around what you do. So in the world of engineering, or automotive engineering, we know that German companies have often used their native language as a strapline without having to translate it, regardless of whether the end user can actually understand the written strapline. But what it does do is remind them of where the origin of where this company came from. Your logo. You need to think about how it will be reproduced and where it will appear. If it's on a website or on an app, if it's on the side of a lorry making its way across country, on the fuselage of a plane, or on a piece of packaging. We need to know that this identity is robust. Will it reproduce in one color? And is it going to feature a symbol? Some symbols will have different meanings in different parts of the world. So we need to be careful if we're creating a new logo that, and we are building an emblem and not just a word mark, that we don't create confusion in our intended marketplace. So these things all need to be considered. A mascot. Not every brand has a mascot. I do love mascots. I think that they create great emotional connection with our customers, with our staff. That they have multiple uses, and if you use a mascot, then you have complete control of the personality of the brand. They'll never grow old. You can use humor and emotion in connecting with people. And that might be a useful tool when you're trying to bridge the language barrier. So where they see a visual mascot, but maybe it's based on a creature that stands for the type of mood and qualities and attitude that they believe in. It could be one way of breaking down language barriers. Color has meaning. Color is a whole language in itself. There's a whole value system on color. So sometimes we see red as as danger, as energy. Look how the color red has been very successful in the world of sport. Think of the football teams that are at the top of global leagues because and readily identified by the color red. Think of how color can transmit meaning. The color pink, for instance, can pacify violent offenders. Baker Miller pink is is famous for being used by American prison systems to calm angry people. And so color can actually affect our moods. A green interior in a restaurant might make us calm and relax and want to spend more time drinking coffee. Typography is really the handwriting of the brand. So don't miss an opportunity there. Don't just be lazy. Choose a font with purpose, a font with personality that matches your values and brings it to life. Of course, we have to be careful because if we work with a font foundry, we have to buy licenses, and that could be quite expensive as we go global to keep on top of all those licenses. So it might be attractive then to choose a font from, say, Windows 10. But choose a font that matches the attitude, the values of your organization and is legible. And the aesthetics is really the balance, the delicate harmony of how you place all these elements together, so that there'll be situations where the logo might not be present, but we can still identify that we're in the right place because it's that balance, that look and feel that's so important. Your brand identity is how you want the world to perceive you. Your brand image is the idea in the mind of your various audiences built up on experience. Brand experience itself. Here's the proof in the pudding. And what experience are you actually going to provide for people? Is it going to bring your values to life? Are you communicating with a consistent voice? So if I was a global traveler and I saw your brand on my travels, and I was used to the experience back home, if I visited that particular retail outlet or wherever that brand may be being offered, I would expect continuity, a consistency. And that can translate across language barriers. But, I would be expecting the qualities to be present. I wouldn't be expecting a completely alien experience. So we need to think about how we transfer the brand idea into these different culture settings. And that, of course, is going to lead to this feeling of authenticity, because if there's a disconnect in that consistency, we're going to start thinking, how well is this brand being managed? Your brand is a long-term investment. It's strategic. It's not tactical. Branding is for the long term. You're playing the long game. There'll be people that may not come to you and need you for years, but they'll be very aware of you, and they'll be watching you from afar. You might not be right for them at that point in their life, but it doesn't mean they're not building up an idea about you. So the brand strategy is long term. Your brand needs to be where people expect it to be. So we shouldn't shy away from technological developments, new software, new apps. As they come onto the market, explore them and find out, are they right for you? Is it the place where your audience would expect to find you? Of course, online, we need to be transparent. It's so easy for people to find out the truth. There's so many different avenues of expression for the disgruntled user to vent their discomfort or also equally their satisfaction with your brand. A cause here in the online world, I think, is particularly helpful, and that again is going to come back to your purpose. If you have a clear idea around what your purpose is, then that can help you push a cause that you are passionately behind. And that gives an opportunity in the online world for your audiences to reflect that and to get involved and give you feedback as they celebrate that cause and get involved themselves. All of this is about differentiation. So these ideas of authenticity, your purpose and the cause are going to help you stand apart from your competitors. So don't forget the environment. Think about where you are. If you think about the environment in terms of corporate social responsibility, are you causing a problem, or are you a brand that is taking its footprint very seriously and is delicate about that and has an understanding about the environment? In fact, it could be cause-related, could come back to your sense of purpose. Also, the environment is actually the marketplace that you're in. So look at the marketplace that you're going to be moving into in these territories that you've not traded in before, and make sure that you've done your homework. Perhaps work with a local agency who can give you valuable insights, and spend time before you spend a lot of money pouring all your attention on a new market without being properly informed. So in my last section, we're going to look at brand sustainability. So the important point here is that we can't do it on our own. We really need joined up thinking and we need to work with all other departments. So here's a chance for you to start thinking about your relationship with HR. The HR department is responsible for so much communication. Employer branding is huge. If you look at employer branding campaigns, they do some really exciting work. It's as if actually the HR department is doing some of the most creative communications out there. So it's important to make sure that HR and marketing are speaking together, that the messages that we are communicating to our external audiences tie up with the messages that we are communicating with our potential employees. So you think of a recruitment campaign. Recruitment could be another opportunity to introduce your brand to global audiences. So, for instance, you might actually run a recruitment campaign in universities around the world, introducing those students to your brand. Of course, many of the universities in the United Kingdom attract global students. So there will be undergraduates from all over the world in British universities being exposed to these brands, and they're going to take those ideas with them back home. They will have been introduced to these brands. So recruitment is an important function here. And every time we run a recruitment campaign, whether it's a print campaign or whether it's a run-through online, is going to make a statement about the type of organization you are. Think about your induction. An induction is very important time when we get people on board. So when people have decided to come and work for your organization, they need to be introduced to the culture. They need to understand your history and where it all began. They need to understand their part and the duty of care that they have to this organization that they've become a part of. So the induction period is incredibly important. It's a delicate time. Lots of people have been left almost rudderless, not knowing where they're going because they've expected just to get on with it. But induction allows you to set down properly, understanding who you're working with and your full responsibilities to the brand. Learning and development is a great opportunity. So the CIM, of course, provides lots of training courses. The Brand Masterclass, of course, is one of those. And when we allow our staff to go off and train, they get energized. They come up with new ideas. They get an opportunity to meet with other people that do similar roles to them, but from other organizations. They can continue that conversation on LinkedIn, but they can take back new ideas and energy into the business. So it's important that we invest in training. When people leave your company, they become alumni. And so as they travel, if they've had a good experience, they will continue to recommend you. They'll say, it was the best job I ever had. And that would be one of the best glowing references you could ever have. All of this is part of the brand communication. Employee engagement is a very important tool here for the HR department, and it's one that I think that is most closely related to brand management. Employee engagement is about understanding the narrative, the history of the brand. It's about being given an opportunity as an individual to voice your concerns so that staff can become whistleblowers if they feel that the values that the brand has been built on are being violated. Employee engagement is a very important part of HR. Employee engagement is the importance of line managers who become brand champions within reach of every member of staff. And so it will be their role also to bring the brand to life, to make sure that it is being honoured and respected. And integrity, ultimately, the last building block of employee engagement will come through the values being lived and brought to life. We need to reward and recognize good behavior. So if we've been careful to let everybody know what this brand is about and what it stands for, then we need to let people know when they've done a great job. Look around your colleagues and let them know that they did a fantastic job. There's nothing like being recognized for the work that we do. Of course, there's an opportunity here to give people new job titles, or even give them an award, or give them a new pay grade. All of this builds on the brand, so that you've got a content, happy, rewarded employees who ultimately are going to build up the brand. We need to communicate these ideas of the brand. And so I talked about an induction. A brand book could be a great document that could get the collaboration between marketing and HR. This is not the brand guidelines, but this is a separate piece of work in itself. A brand book doesn't even have to be a physically printed book. What it is about being inspirational and accessible. It's about bringing the ideas of the brand, those key brand criteria, to life. You could use the boardroom and turn it into a gallery space. You could use your reception area. In fact, you could use the dining area if you have a restaurant at your place of work that is actually decorated with the story of your brand, that is brought to life so that people don't lose sight of why they're working for this organization and the role and the impact that they will have if they drift away from those values. Bring those key brand criteria to life. If you do create a physical, tangible brand book, then it's going to be a valuable tool that's suitable for employee induction. Now, the brand guidelines, I'm sure all of us will be familiar with as marketers managing brands. And of course, nobody likes to be called a logo cop, but they, of course, have a very important role to play. And brand guidelines need to be management endorsed. Brand guidelines really need to be accessible too. You may well use a digital asset management system. There are digital asset management systems that are available to buy. You could be working with a development company to develop your own, but please don't leave all of the files on your own laptop so that they get left behind on a bus one day or a train journey. We need them to be somewhere safe. So in the cloud is a good place, password protected, and with all the methods to track who is having access to these files and when they're using them. As I say, management endorsed, so it's clear to everybody that has access to these important artwork files and templates that they are potentially going to miscommunicate the brand, that they have a real duty of care, and that there could be penalties if they mismanage the brand, because all those guidelines are being made available to them. We need key contact information, so nobody can say, there wasn't anybody I could talk to about this, I needed some help. We need to make it clear what the brand strategy actually is. And we need to understand what those identity elements actually are. So explanations of your logo, why you got your name and where it came from, what the strapline actually means and how it underpins your proposition. All the elements need to be described, perhaps even the color palette, why you chose these particular colors and the values that they represent. We need to understand artwork files. Lots of people get into a lot of mess, at the final point of brand communication where they use the wrong artwork files. So, do your homework. Make sure that new members of staff, new marketing executives fully understand the difference between different file formats. So using the right artwork for the right situation without damage or harm to the brand. Provide templates so people don't have to, remake anything. When you've got that tired executive who's sitting on a plane making their journey somewhere, they shouldn't be creating a whole brand new PowerPoint template. They should be using something that makes their life easier and builds on the existing equity of the brand. Give lots of examples of best practice so people know what works and what doesn't work. And think about the reproduction aspect of your brand identity. I see so many mistakes when we've got this carefully thought through brand identity and then it's being poorly printed, the color is starting to drift into a different tone, almost a completely different color, that people aren't using the correct fonts because they haven't paid for the license, so they've decided to use a different font. We need to think about how this brand is reproduced around the world and make it easy for people through clear communication. Another important point of the ongoing sustainability of this brand is your intellectual property. And so we need to understand this. We probably need to get some help from the legal department or work with outside specialist law firm because we want to protect this. One day you might want to sell the whole brand, not just your products and services. And people will only be interested if you actually own all of your intellectual property. We have trademarks to protect your product names, your logo, your jingles, if you have a jingle sound sonic signature. We have copyright that can protect literature, art, photographs, any music and video. We have design rights that will protect the shape of an object. We have registered designs that concern the appearance, packaging, patterns that you might be using, and sets of colors used together. And we have patent protection, there to protect our inventions and products. For example, machines, parts of machines, tools, and medicines. And you can see here on this slide that some of these are going to need time to plan for. Copyright and design rights are automatic, but you're going to need 4 months for a trademark. Registered designs a month, and a patent can take 5 years. So, we need to factor this in when we are planning our brands and management of our brands. And now think about that important time when your brand debuts for the first instance, when people are introduced to it and they've never seen it before. That brand launch is your permission to put on a show, to capture everybody's imagination. A brand launch will attract the media. Trade journals are only too happy to cover a brand launch. So there's an opportunity here for you to get valuable exposure. You are on show. Think of when we launch a ship, somebody will crack a bottle of champagne on the side of the hull. We will see perhaps celebrities and famous dignitaries. Important people will be there in attendance. It's no different when you introduce your brand to the world. It's up to you how you're going to do it. But it should be linked to the ideas of the brand. Your values and your ethos should be evident. This is why your culture will be on display. The way that you do things. This will be an instant opportunity for people to measure you by. Your strategy will be evident, or the lack of strategy will be evident. So this is why it's so important to answer those questions of the key brand criteria. For many people, it will be the first time they see your identity. So will your identity create an idea in the mind that builds a strong image for the viewing public? So we need to make sure that the identity is best represented at that point of debut. Your brand champion will be on display too. So the CEO, the founder, the managing director, it's an opportunity for them to take center stage and talk about the brand. They are the brand evangelists. And so we expect this more and more of the world's biggest brands. When they have a big brand launch, we expect it to almost be an online or a television event. And so there's an opportunity here because, of course, we're going to be measuring that brand champion, that CEO. How confident are they? How much of their personality is going to have an impact on the perception of the brand? Of course, around the champion, that CEO, are going to be the brand ambassadors. That's you and your colleagues. And how they behave and bring the brand to life is very important too. So you could be creating all this focus and attention around this launch. But if on the ground people are disinterested, being rude, unhelpful, if this exposure creates a huge amount of interest and people asking questions online or telephoning you or stopping your colleagues and asking for more information, and they know nothing about this, it's going to cause a problem. So one of the most important things here too is to make sure that your staff, your employees, are fully aware of your intentions. If you're venturing out into new markets, let them know. Let key members of staff be very confident that they can answer questions about this so that they don't feel off guard if they're asked embarrassing questions and know nothing about this intention of the brand or this new market that's opening up. So I've really been covering big aspects that are included in the Brand Masterclass. And I hope many of you will be interested in joining me on the CIM Brand Masterclass, where this will be expanded with lots of case studies, examples, and exercises for all the attending delegates. So I look forward to meeting many of you in the future Brand Masterclasses. And it's now an opportunity for me to answer some of your questions as I hand back to James.
Thank you, Paul. We're now going to answer some questions that have been submitted by everybody. As a quick reminder, you can still submit your questions via the chat box in the attendee control room panel. Our first question is there a hierarchy of brand criteria, Paul?
For me, it's very much in the order that I presented it. I always want to know the purpose. Why are we doing this? And it's much easier to get there if you're speaking to the founder of a business, an entrepreneur. usually they're so excited about it, they wear it on their sleeve. It's really a part of who they are. And when you look at some of the world's biggest brands that have been going for 100 years, if you do your research and find out about the founders, often you'll find that the whole idea of the brand is closely linked to a sense of who they are. Begin with purpose. Think about where do you want to take this idea, that vision, where ultimately, how big could this idea be? What do you really want to achieve with it? Like the great orators, like the great politicians who have an idea, literally they have a dream, and they want to take you on that path, that journey with them. And think about your values. Your purpose, vision, and values are absolutely essential because they are going to prepare you in the long term. It makes it much easier to make decisions when you know the qualities that you're going to celebrate. These values that you're building the brand on. And I'm not talking about generic words like trust and respect, because any enterprise should exercise those qualities. I'm talking about those special attributes that fire you up. Is it about adding fun to this particular sector? Is it about safety that you're driven by? Is it about being an innovator, wanting the desire to create something completely new that nobody's ever thought of? And so that these qualities are the ones that you amplify and become known for. So purpose, vision, and values are, for me, where it begins. And the conversation then starts to branch out from there as we build up an idea. So hopefully that helps answer that question.
Thank you very much, Paul. And then we've got two questions from the insurance sector. I'm not sure if you have experience there, Paul, but basically we've been asked what brand model would work best, and what are the benefits of a brand to a service organisation in the insurance sector?
Right. I mean, people like to, in the world of insurance, they're going to want to deal with a name that they can trust, a name that they're familiar with. So if you are a global insurance provider, it might be in your interest to work with more locally recognized names. Historically, there may be a provider that has a good heritage, a good history that complements your brand's vision, but could actually benefit from your support. That absolutely, if you wanted to acquire that, this would be the endorsed brand model. So you've got the parent company, if you like, sort of underwriting insurance globally, and then you have local offices, regional offices, national offices of brand names that people know, they trust, perhaps their families have grown up with, and this would be one way to do it. But you would then obviously introduce the fact that they are being endorsed by this parent, this umbrella company. For me, I think that this is a sound model because it allows you then to introduce them to the parent and also give them extra assurances that actually, this name that they're familiar with, that maybe for generations of their family have been trusting and using, is now supported by a much bigger global enterprise. They're part of if you like, a network. And that could be one way of assuring them and making them feel more confident. So without knowing too much about the situation that the company that is asking this question, my initial gut feeling would be to go down the endorsed brand architecture format. I think it could be a good way, particularly as we're thinking here about going into new territories. Hopefully that helps.
Absolutely. And just one more before we go into a couple of sort of Brexit-centric questions. Can you give the audience an example of how you would apply sensation to the service industry?
Yeah.
Something you mentioned earlier.
I mean, sensation. Okay. I mean, I've talked about the senses, but if I were most of us really probably do the majority of our business by email and by telephone. And so if I'm stuck on the phone and I'm waiting to speak to somebody, I'm probably going to be greeted initially by a recorded voice giving me a number of options, a pathway to get through to the switchboard or the person that I want to speak to. Of course, who you choose to record that message is going to be very important because that's one of the first introductions to the brand. I mean, we may start to hear that voice a lot if we're going to do a lot of telephone calls, for instance. So you might think about music that's being played. So that's going to embrace, the sense of hearing. A sound is very, very, very important. So think about, the sonic branding in the service industries is particularly effective. Think of all those ringtones. Think of every time you start up your laptop, is there a sound that you associate with that particular brand? It's very effective. It doesn't need any translation. It works across languages and cultures. So I think the sense of sound and the sense of hearing is a very important opportunity. Sense of smell. If you have an opportunity to entertain people, if people come to your offices for meetings, they're going to be very aware of the ambience that you provide. You could have a branded scent for your offices. Hotels do this particularly well. Upmarket hotels will be identified by a particular aroma that they've invested in. So you can see how the senses can be embraced, that there are lots of opportunities here for us in embracing the senses. Hospitality, opportunities of the sense of taste. Nobody likes a ropey mug of coffee. All of these things are opportunities. So if you're a service industry, how we look after people, that hospitality, opens up lots of opportunities. And if we drop the ball at that point, then we're going to have that gut feeling coming into it, if you like, that sixth sense, when people just feel, I don't quite trust these people. It's not quite, balancing out. So, I think there's lots of opportunities here in embracing the senses.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Paul. So we've had a couple of questions. We've talked about Brexit. We've talked about sort of exporting. Are there any particular countries that you've heard of that are quite keen on GB products and services, and should people be looking outside of the EU?
I think we should. I think we should anyway. I don't think we should ever rest on our laurels. I think the opportunity for the brand is to keep asking ourselves, who would this brand appeal to, and where are those opportunities? So we can see that there is a natural avenue through the Commonwealth countries who are going to understand the British mindset, the British values. So perhaps by opening up connections along the channels of the Commonwealth nations. There's a natural dialogue between English-speaking countries. So, of course, the United States should be really much easier to open up a dialogue with, because literally they're going to understand what you're talking about. They're going to understand your marketing messages, so it's going to be much easier. So think of those English-speaking nations, if we're talking about British brands exporting. Think about the Commonwealth. And then also start to look at the CIM's Knowledge Hub. So we have a whole wealth of information available to you. It's not just from a brand point of view. So my colleagues, other course directors, are sharing their knowledge on the CIM Knowledge Hub. So please look there too for ideas and opportunities.
And then just a couple of extra ones. We've been asked around if we feel that how the Brexit negotiations are currently going at the moment, if you feel that there's been damage to the Union GB flag and the Union GB brand. So I was wondering if you could give us your thoughts on the branding of the country at the moment.
Yes, I do. I think there must be a negative perception, because I think historically we've always been independently minded. We've certainly have made an impact in the world. For lots of good reasons, and sometimes for reasons that maybe we're not so proud of it as history has unfolded. But nevertheless, we have made an impact. We are in control of our narrative. We are an ideas-based nation. Because we are an island race, we have a rich nautical tradition from the very early beginnings of our history. Going out, traveling around the world, taking our ideas and learning, embracing the cultures as well that we have met in our travels. So we have a rich tradition. So I think that what's happening at the moment is in many ways sort of harming that notion that we are assertive and we know ourselves. Is looking potentially as if we can't make our mind up, and that could be of some harm. It's one thing to be independently minded and to go off and do your own thing, and in the long term be proven to have done the right thing. And it's another thing to be aggravating and irritating everybody. I think people, like brands, they want decisive brands that are authoritative and know what they stand for. And I think the harm here would be that we appeared that we can't make our mind up, that we're split down the middle, and that therefore is going to be a criticism of leadership and direction.
Thank you. And then one final one we've got time for. How would you handle a rebranding strategy post-Brexit? Right.
How long is a piece of string? It's quite a big question in itself. It really depends on your product, your service, your history, your ambition. It's all about doing your homework too. But it's got to come from your heart. I think the people that are running this business, who's in charge? The management team, the business owners. It's not about necessarily creating something you think everybody else will want, because that could come apart in the long term. It's about being true to yourself, knowing what you are behind, where your heart and soul is, what you passionately believe in, and that you are in the best position to deliver on. Having that courage to deliver from the heart, striving, overall for excellence, and not being mired by and stuck in that pursuit of perfection. And ultimately, with brands, you want to be remembered in the long term. It's about creating a legacy. The brands that are celebrated in all the big coffee table books on brand strategies are the ones that had a purpose and an idea.
Thank you very much, Paul. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. I'd just like to say thank you to Paul again for presenting this webinar, and for everyone who attended today. Once you leave today's webinar, you will see the survey on the presentation, and we'd appreciate it if you'd provide your feedback. On behalf of CIM, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and please feel free to check in at the hub for the latest information from CIM and our partners.